Hey, grumpy Ash Wednesday to you. This is Patrick Coffin. Put up your dukes. Welcome to the annual Lent Wars, where Catholics give really bad example by arguing with each other on social media about what Lent is and is not. So here's the truth about Lent, starting with the truth about Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday, today, hence my ashes, are the beginning of Lent. When does Lent officially begin? As soon as the clock ticks past midnight on Ash Wednesday. That's the beginning of Lent. How long does Lent last? Is it literally 40 days? No, it is not. 40 is an approximation. It's a symbolic number to honor the 40 days and 40 nights of the flood rains, the 40 years in the desert of the Jews under Moses' leadership, the 40 days of fast of the prophet Elijah, and most especially the 40 days of fasting that Jesus Christ underwent under the impulse of the Holy Spirit to prepare for his public ministry. So that's why 40 days. It's closer to 44. And by the way, the Sundays of Lent, are they included in Lent? They are. Here's why. The church calls them the first, second, third, and fourth Sundays of Lent. So they are included in Lent. Now, if you have voluntarily imposed upon yourself a fast, good for you. I do the same. But the church, strictly speaking, doesn't require a 40-day fast from the beginning, which is Ash Wednesday today, and the end, which is, anybody know when Lent ends? Lent ends at the beginning of Holy Thursday Mass. And that's the beginning of another season called the Triduum. And that begins another season on Easter Sunday, technically the Vigil Mass of Holy Saturday. Then we begin Easter, and that lasts all the way to Pentecost. So, the Sundays of Lent, if you have done a voluntary fast, you can relax your fast if you want. It's fitting to do so on Sunday because Sunday is the day of feasting. It's the honor of the resurrection, the fundamental miracle of Christianity. So, fasting and abstinence. What is fasting? Well, it's a really complicated answer. It means not eating. Fasting is not eating. What's a day of abstinence? A day of abstinence is a day in which you don't eat meat. So let's start with the law of fast. That binds Catholics who are what's called the age of majority, or 18 years old, up to the age of 59. So days of fasting are Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. You can have one meal of average, moderate size, and then two smaller meals, the total of which don't exceed the amount of the main meal. Now, if you find that infinitely confusing, I do as well. Think of it as one regular meal and two snacks. And if by snacks you want to have a little bit more than a snack, that's fine. Don't become a Pharisee. Don't get all full metal scrupulosity about this. It's against the spirit of Lent, which is meant to focus on doing penance, increasing self-mastery, and growing in your friendship with Christ, who suffered an awful lot so that you and I could enter into heaven. So, the law of fast allows eating one full meal plus two smaller meals on the side. You can have water. That does not violate the fast. And the day of abstaining from meat, or abstinent days, that would be Ash Wednesday and the Fridays of Lent, including, of course, Good Friday, which is technically part of the Triduum. Now, why meat no and fish yes? Well, the history of this is a little bit fuzzy. There's no consensus on specifically why. There's some theories. One theory says that Noah and his family were able to eat fish during the 40 days and 40 nights because they swam and they weren't part of the cargo of the ark, so to speak. St. Paul distinguishes different kinds of foods, which may have been an allusion to Jewish dietary restrictions. Thomas Aquinas has an interesting theory. Now remember, this is not biologically true, I don't think. Thomas was working with 12th century science. But he says in part 2 of the Summa Theologica, he says, fasting was instituted by the church in order to bridle the concupiscences of the flesh, which regard pleasures of touch in connection with food and sex. Wherefore the church forbade those who fast to partake of those foods, which afford both most pleasure to the palate and besides are a very great incentive to lust. So Thomas thought that eating meat made you horny, in shorthand. Catholics are not obliged to believe that part. But there's several different ways to understand why meat. Jesus suffered in his flesh. Meat was associated with feasting, with high life. It was a rather rare commodity. It wasn't enjoyed by commoners and poor people. So that's the backdrop of why we abstain from meat on those days during Lent. Finally, a little note. Lent itself comes from Lent or Lenkt. It's a Middle English word, and it just means spring. You can see the sense of lengthening of days in this root word, Lent. So, happy Lent, everybody. Make it solemn in the sense of, it's grave, it's penitential. There's a lot to be penitential about in the church and in the world today, as we all know. But I do hope it brings you closer to Christ. And I do hope that you grow in self-mastery and love for others. That's the whole point of Lent. Now, one I think psychologically great thing about Lent is that when you're hungry, let's say on a day of fasting, like today, Ash Wednesday, it makes you think about the fact that you're hungry. And that hunger should be a symbol, it should be a token of the greater hunger you and I must have, should have, and if we're seeing things correctly, do have, for the ultimate satisfaction, which is the food of God's presence, especially the food of His presence in and through the Holy Eucharist, the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus Christ. So let your hunger be a sign of that deeper hunger for God. It's the reason we exist, and it's the end toward which we strive. So happy Lent, everybody. Don't be too grumpy, and don't, by all means, by whatever you do, for the sake of your family members, don't give up coffee. Don't put them through your fast. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?